Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Art of MMA. I'm Mike Ginn. That's the mechanic, Brandon Cuttino, back in action for another week. We're talking Melvin Guillard. We're talking, well, the sad story of Melvin Guillard at this point. Well, me and Brandon will talk about that. We'll also get to finally make some picks. It's been a few weeks. We'll make our picks for UFC Vegas 62. We got Alexa Grasso versus Araujo in the final, or the main event of that one. And then we'll also talk a little bit about what's going on in the world of MMA. Kind of a shorter episode this week. But before we get to that, Brandon, we got to go check out FightersFirst.shop. Got to get all the latest mechanic merchandise. We got to get all the Fighters First merchandise, Art of MMA as well. Go ahead and let Fighters First be a part of your story. And we got a lot of cool stuff going on there. If you notice, there's a new mechanic hoodie. Just put a new hoodie out for Alex Soto. Obviously, the Kung Lee collection for the MMA fanatics. Wrestling fanatics, Paul Orndorff, Ivan Koloff, the newer collections. Always got all the classic ones as well. I've been redoing a lot of cool stuff in the shop, so go ahead and check it out. FightersFirst.shop. Brandon, not only is it a victory week, we did it over in London. How you feeling about the Giants right now?
Feeling good, man. 3-0. They are 3-0 over in London. And man, it's a team effort out here. Saying like I was talking to a couple of Eagle fans that I know that keep raving about their team being undefeated. I'm saying like, hey, the Giants are 4-1. They're not even at full strength, man. They still got a whole bunch of injuries at the wide receiver core. So hopefully,
everywhere. We got injuries everywhere.
That's true, but hopefully, like saying, when everybody comes back healthy, they'll be good to go.
I'm excited only because of this. Like, I don't care what the Eagles are doing. I don't care what the Cowboys or Washington's doing. When we play them, that's a different story. But I'm kind of like in the mindset of like, stay in our lane, run our own race. We've been the worst football team in the last 5 years. At this point, I'm taking every game and I'm enjoying it. And I don't care what the rest of the league's doing right now because we're not the worst team in the league anymore. And it's fun to watch. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. Maybe after a couple years of us being back in the picture, I'll be a little bit more competitive about it. But right now, man, I'm just enjoying the hell out of this football team. So shout out to Brian Dable. He's got this team playing hard. Saquon's playing hard. Everybody's playing hard. DJ. People can finally stop hating on my boy DJ. Finally. Over in the mixed martial arts world, Brandon, we got a few things to talk about real quick before we start this show. Announcements. Le'Veon Bell's going to be fighting former UFC fighter Uriah Hall. Uriah Hall retired from MMA, I guess like a month ago, maybe at this point. He'll be fighting on October 29th in a boxing fight. Actually, the first professional fight for both guys in a boxing ring. Le'Veon Bell, of course, had the exhibition with Adrian Peterson and knocked Peterson out. So be interesting to see what, because, I mean, Le'Veon's an athlete, right? Like anything can happen when you got some of these people that are just uber athletic and you put on a pair of boxing gloves. So, and Uriah Hall can't do any spinning highlight reel kicks. So,
yep.
We'll see how that one works out. I do want to get your thoughts on this one. Frankie Edgar announced for his retirement fight against Cruz Gutierrez in New York City. We were talking off air about November 12th. That's actually almost more important to me. What do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely not the fight. I don't think most fans were looking for. I think they were looking for maybe like a big name like a Dominic Cruz versus Frankie Edgar. But instead, we get Chris Gutierrez, which I mean to me the man.
No slouch.
Yeah, exactly. No slob. To me, the man's gonna be throwing his low kicks. Maybe Frankie Edgar can catch one and take him down and use his wrestling to get the job done. But
I'll be rooting hard for Frankie, but I don't like that matchup for him.
Yep.
I just don't think it's a good matchup. And then finishing off what we talked about last week, we were talking about with Dern and the whole division with Esparza and Rose. Well, we didn't really know exactly what's next for Jan, right? Like she's been winning, but she's kind of like in a waiting game with what works out with Wei Lee and Carla. Well, she wants Rose. She said she thinks Rose Namajunas is the best fighter in the division. I think she said it's not even a secret. And that's who she wants next. So hopefully Rose will accept that challenge, and then we can kind of get a little bit more clarity because Brandon doesn't want Rose to get a rematch. So,
like I said, because Rodriguez to me is the number one contender.
So, but hey, if Rose comes out and beats the brakes off Jan, if it's like a really dramatic, like I don't even way to say it, a really impressive victory, then I think she jumps Marina and gets that rematch. But we'll see. There's a lot of women that are definitely contenders in that division, so it's an exciting time for that division. And then real quick, I want to get your thoughts, Brandon. You obviously talked about it at length when kicking it this week. The Glory Collision 4 card. Alistair Overeem got the win over Badr. He made his return to kickboxing. What'd you think of that fight?
Good fight. It actually went the way how I thought it would be, which is what I said, that Badr has to win this fight in the first round. If it goes past the first round, I think Overeem's going to take it, and that's what happened. Overeem survived the first round, and then in the second and third round, he just applied this pressure, got Badr tired. He got the 2 knockdowns in the third round, and that's what won him the fight.
Honestly, I would have looked at it the opposite way going in, though, because I just remember his last few MMA fights where Alistair starts off strong, but by the 4th, 5th round, he's done. 3rd round, he's done. But I guess, different worlds, different strategies, so to speak, when it comes to kickboxing. I had one more question for you. You guys kind of said it was controversial on Kicking It with Tiffany Van Soos getting the win. I didn't think it was that controversial. What made it so controversial?
It was just that, one, the crowd was kind of pro Moroccan. But plus 2, her opponent basically like outstruck her in all the stats. She was ahead of Tiffany Van Soos. So that's why, if you look at it that way, you like you said, you could lean it towards her opponent. But like I said, I had it for Tiffany Van Soos as well.
Me, I listen to other shows and I'll give a shout out to Cage My IQ. Like Dan does this a lot, right, on his show, where he talks about stats, like this is how a fight went because of the stats. And I'm like, well, that's cool. But I also have to see what I actually see. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I see somebody controlling the center of the ring. I can see somebody landing the bigger shots. I see somebody who is controlling the narrative of a fight, but then you're going to tell me the other person landed like 10 more punches per round. I'm like, if I'm a judge, I'm not caring about that. If it's close, I might look at okay, close. Well, the stats favor this person. But a judge isn't looking at the stats when they're watching a fight. And yep. I don't think the stats were probably that dramatically more in the favor of her opponent, right?
No, they were she was heavily a lot more.
I don't know. I just watched the fight as a fan. I thought Tiffany won. I thought 48-47 was probably more accurate. I don't think she ran away with it, but I don't know. 40. I think when I saw the one girl put her head down when the judge was announcing 48-46, I think she knew that she lost. But I think 48-47 was probably more accurate. I don't think it was controversial. But I don't know. We'll see. Maybe she'll get another shot down the road. Tiffany Time Bomb continues to win.
Yeah.
But you guys are here to talk about mixed martial arts, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to jump right into Battleground. There's no reaction this week, so right into Battleground. And the topic that came to mind this last weekend while I was deciding what to talk about this week was Melvin Guillard. We talked about fighters like Bigfoot Silva, right? Like maybe it's time to go. But Melvin's kind of slid under the radar. He lost a number of MMA fights, switched over to bare knuckle, got knocked out a couple times more. And then on top of that, now he's failed to be licensed in 2 straight states. Most recently in Colorado, they wouldn't license him. Florida wouldn't license him before. And let me tell you something. If Florida's not going to license you, almost nobody will license you. Because Florida is very liberal with some of their requirements for
they're relaxed, like Texas.
Yeah, very relaxed. That's a good way to put it. Very relaxed. And when I looked at it, I pulled up Melvin Guillard's fight record, right? And we know he's lost 14 of 15 overall. But he's been knocked out in 7 of the last 8. And I remember Sergio vividly saying, you can't tell a fighter when it's time to go. They're going to fight if they want to fight. It's up to them. It's their bodies. It's their lives. But Brandon, this becomes the debate, because at what point does he become a liability to the promotions, to the athletic commission? Because we see the downside of when something bad happens to a fighter. If Lord forbid a fighter dies in that cage or dies in a ring, the amount of heat that the politicians and other people put on a sport that's already considered a blood sport among many and is already fought like hell to get licensed in all the states and around the world. I mean, how long did we fight to get UFC in New York, right? There's so many steps, and every time something bad happens to a fighter, and let's be real, this is a combat sport. It can happen in one fight. It can happen in 100 fights. But when something bad happens to a fighter, it sets everything back, way back. And my question to you is it time for one of Melvin Guillard's, whether it's his handler, his manager, his loved ones, his family, somebody to tell him, you got to go do something else.
I mean, the thing is, like, how do we know that somebody hasn't told him this, but he's just not listening to them? You know,
How do they like? Is there a way to make him?
no, like the only way you make him is exactly what the athletic commission is doing, which is not sanctioning him, not licensing him. So you already had 2 states that said, "No, you can't fight here." So basically, if no state will license you, then that means you can't fight. Then that means you will have to stop, or you have to go overseas. You know. So, but I mean, but the thing is, like, say, like, I mean, we don't know if a family member, a manager, a handler has told him, hey, you should stop this, and again, he might not be listening to, because like you said, if the fighter wants to fight, they'll fight. If there's going to be a promotion out there that's going to have you and try to get you on a card, they're saying you're always going to have an opportunity, but again, it's up to the athletic commission. If they license you, they're giving you the green light, but if they're not licensed you, then it's going to be kind of hard for you to get fights.
Brandon, it's been 5 years since he's won any fight. He beat Leighton Brady in a bare knuckle fight. It wasn't BKFC. It was just another bare knuckle fight. BKB, whatever.
Yeah, I kind of want to say. I think where was that? I think he did have a fight in June that he won, but I think it doesn't show up on his like Tapology or anything like that. So I really don't know the whole situation with that. But
I won't talk about that because I'm not sure. But
yeah,
and then go back before that. The last time he won an MMA fight, 2014 in World Series of Fighting against Cal Vicante.
Yep.
That's how far back you got to go for him to get a win. He's been knocked out by good fighters. He's been knocked out by bad fighters. I mean, Izzy knocked him out in Australia. When he switched over to boxing, he won the first one. Like I said, that bare knuckle fight against Brady. And then Jackson, Takanori Gomi and Ryzen beat him. Ike via flag, Valley Flag got him. Yep. Terry House, Scott O'Shaughnessy, he got intentionally DQ'd against Harris Stevenson, and then which was the one fight he actually made it to the second round. And then Joe Riggs knocked him out. These names, like some of them are names, like from the MMA world, from fighting. Obviously, Izzy, a lot of people get knocked out by Izzy. But a lot of them aren't names. A lot of them are people that only if you're a diehard bare knuckle fighter do you know, or a diehard boxing fan do you know. A legend like Takanori Gomi, who's lost a majority of his fights in the last couple years, knocked him out. And it just says to me that, that you can speak on this actually. When a fighter goes through his career and doesn't get touched, a lot of times he can take more punishment, right? But when he gets knocked out and that jaw gets aligned, the equilibrium gets thrown off, or whatever the case is, at that point, you're more vulnerable to get knocked out, right?
Yeah, I mean, you look at Chuck Liddell, that happened to him. You look at BJ Penn, that's what happened with him as well.
Yeah, it's like you can take the punishment, but once you finally get cracked, that's it. And I think that's where Guillard is at this point. Is like, is he getting brain damage? Is he suffering CTE? Because a lot of these stoppages that you can go look on YouTube, there's a number of them. He's now the highlight of the other way. I remember Melvin Guillard being one of the most exciting fighters to watch. I remember him going against, back in UFC, like that fight with Shane Roller, Evan Dunham, Jeremy Stevens. Oh my God, Jeremy Stevens' fight was razor close. It's a fun, exciting fight. You want to go back further, his fight with Nate Diaz, even though he lost. Dennis Seaver, like all these fighters, Big Daddy Joe Stevenson, like all these people, right? Like he went to war with a lot of guys. He's been fighting for, oh my God, so many years. His kickboxing, speaking of kickboxing before any of that, he's been fighting since 2002, 20 years.
Yeah, man, he was on the Ultimate Fighter season 2.
Yeah, and he's still not even that old, which is crazy. He's only 39. He's been fighting since he was a baby, basically. He doesn't know anything else. And that's why I keep saying, look, Greg Jackson and him separated years ago, right? Like Jackson Wink family, like we wish you well. We can't keep supporting this. That was, I want to say 5 years ago, maybe longer. And he still keeps fighting. He still has people in his corner. He still has a team. At some point, like the commissions might be taking the job out of the team's hands, because if they're not going to license him anywhere, but that's not going to stop him from fighting. He can go to Mexico, Brazil, overseas, anywhere. I mean, as long as he has a passport, there's a place that will license him to fight. You mentioned that fight in June that I don't even know about, possibly because there's places that might not license him, that or need to license him. The promoters are the licensees. When UFC goes to Brazil, who's the licensor? UFC. They're the ones that choose what goes on. America has rules. Canada has rules. Mexico is definitely developing more of an athletic commission. They handle a lot of stuff. The bigger the MMA becomes there, they're letting the boxing commissions handle a lot of stuff in Mexico. But there's a lot of parts of the world you can go fight. You know, I remember when you had the issue fighting in, I believe, what was it, Pennsylvania with the eye?
Mm-hmm.
But you can clearly go fight in other states. So it's always a matter of somebody saying yes. And unfortunately, in the fight game, there will always be someone to say, yes, we want to see you go butcher yourself. And just, you know, it's a blood sport. And that's what we've been fighting against in America for so long, to make this a legitimate. It's on ESPN. It's like on our biggest sports networks. It's been on CBS. It's been on ABC now with ESPN or UFC running the ABC shows. We want our sport to be the most successful and biggest sport on the planet and be in front of us on regular TV. But Brandon, what happens if he gets hurt?
Well, I mean, he's doing bare knuckle now, so I mean, it's not like he's not doing MMA fights. He's doing bare knuckle fights.
But if he gets hurt, what's the headline going to be? Former UFC fighter. You know they always go with the biggest name. It's like when Jerry Sandusky got knocked for the child stuff, right? Who did they talk about the most? Joe Paterno. What was his role in it? And that's what happens. You go after the biggest name. Melvin Guillard, bare knuckles, been a prominent promotion for a while now, but they're not on the UFC level. He fought in the UFC a long time. That's what they're going to talk about. They're not going to talk about the World Series of Fighting. You know, they're not even going to talk about his successful kickboxing career before he came to the UFC. They'll talk about the biggest platform. I'll give you the last thought on this one. What do you think should happen, and what do you think will happen with Melvin Guillard?
I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know. I mean, I think the other place he could try would be Texas, but I don't think bare knuckle happens in Texas though, because bare knuckle isn't sanctioned in every state. So I mean, I'm sure they probably will try. They'll probably try to get him in another state. You know, that they usually have fights in. Like, I think maybe Iowa or like Wyoming is like another state that they might try. But again, to me, it's all up to the athletic commissions and what their rules are.
Let me ask you one last question. You talk about bare knuckle, BKFC, another promotion that's trying to legitimize themselves, right? Why do they keep pushing this if they know? Like, they're basically pushing it as a blood sport, right? Because they don't care about his health.
I mean, I know they might still see him as a
draw.
Yeah, as a draw, as a name. I mean, even though to me he hasn't really kind of done anything, like he kind of fell off. But again, he might still have name value for people.
Yeah, leave your thoughts and comments below. I would love to hear what you guys have to say about this one. Personally, I think somebody needs to stop him. I love Melvin Guillard. I love the memory of Melvin Guillard. He was one of my favorite fighters, 10, 15 years ago. But he's not that guy anymore, and he's putting himself in danger, in my opinion. So leave a comment. We're going to switch gears to something a little bit more positive, a little bit, positive for Brandon, not so much for me, because I think I went 0-3 last time we made some picks, and I lost my lead dog status again. UFC Vegas 62, headlined by the ladies. We got one of the superstars of the division, really, with Alexa Grasso. The way she's kind of both in the cage and out of the cage kind of really rose to prominence, going against Viviane Araujo. I always butcher her name. I'm sorry, Viviane. Who's another dominant fighter. This is going to be a really good main event. You also got Cub Swanson, Jonathan Martinez, Askarov, and Roy Val. But we're going to go ahead and start with the main event. Brandon, let me know who you think is going to win this main event and tell me why.
I'm going with Alexa Grasso. I think her striking is on point. I think she's going to use her striking to get the job done. Like I said, she has a nice jab. I think she's going to use her jab to keep her distance, and then she's going to use that jab to help set up her combinations.
Yeah, the thing about Alexa, she fights and trains a lot with in Tijuana over there with Brandon Moreno's camp. She does a lot of traveling with her training as well, and you could just see the improvement every time she steps out. And that last fight against your girl JoJo, Alexa never had a submission before that, but you saw how fluid she took her back and how quickly she got the hooks in, and not only got the rear naked, but was able to switch sides on it. And that just shows her evolution. And I like Viviane a lot. I think she's probably one of the toughest women in that division, hands down. She rolled through KGB Lee. She had a tough loss to the blonde fighter, Caitlin Chikagian. She beat Montefiore and De La Rosa, and had a tough fight with Jessica Ai. Like every fight she's in, if she doesn't win, it's a tough loss. Like she's not going out easy. So I do think that Alexa and her will probably go to a decision, but I do think it's Alexa to win because the only fight that she's lost the last few years, Carla Esparza. Well, Viviane's not going to really wrestle her that much. Tatiana Suarez, another person that can kind of wrestle her. So if it's a stand and bang fight, I'm taking Grasso because I think that's just – and then Felice Herring, by the way, the other loss, since I'm naming all her losses. All wrestlers, though. All people that can grind it out on the ground. And I just don't think that's really Viviane's kind of specialty. So I'm going to take Alexa Grasso in that one. Over in the co-main event, a longtime favorite for everybody, Cub Swanson against the rising Jonathan Martinez. Who you got in that one?
Man, I feel like I want to go with Cub Swanson. Like I know this is his foray into bantamweight, dropping down from 145 to 135. But man, like saying Cub Swanson has that power, man. He can put those hands on you. So I think I'm going to still lean towards Cub Swanson to get a job done with his hands. He likes to box, and he does have some wrestling, but mostly though he's known for his hands.
Well, I mean, Jonathan Martinez is not afraid of a firefight. Mm-hmm. Like we know that he's not afraid of a firefight. He's definitely more home to the division. You don't know. I mean, it worked out for Jose Aldo. It worked out for Frankie Edgar, kind of dropping down these divisions after being a long time in a different division. This is tough for me because Cub was on a kind of a hot streak, except for the Giga fight, right? And Giga's a top contender. That's not a shameful like getting caught with like that. And he lost to Shane Burgos, another top fighter, right? He looked great against Darren Elkins. He looked great before that against Gracie and Pineda. Well, man, Jonathan Martinez has looked really good for a while now. And he's at home in his division. I'm going to go Jonathan Martinez in that one just because, I don't know what that weight cut's going to look for Cub. I mean, he's always been a very skinny guy, and now you're taking more. Like, he walks around not like a heavy dude. So, I don't know. Maybe the cut is easy for him. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's something he never really cut that much weight for 145, so maybe 35 is an easy cut. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But I do know if it's a firefight he's looking for, I think Jonathan Martinez is the perfect opponent. And I think both main event and co-main event, I think, are both going to be firefights. And I think Jonathan Martinez is going to take this one. A number of other great fights on this card. What fight are you really looking at for your highlight?
I'm going to go with that first fight on the main card, which is the light heavyweight fight, which is Serkinov, which I believe he's moving up to light heavyweight because he usually fights at middleweight versus Minifield. And I'm going to go with Minifield to get the job done. Like I said, this is his division. I still think he's probably the bigger, stronger guy. I think he puts those hands on a Serkinov. Serkinov's going to feel it, and he might go night-night. Yeah,
I mean, I agree. I think that's a pretty good pick. The fight I'm looking forward to, we talked about him a number of times this year already, but Tatsuro Taira came out. He made a great impression in his debut. 11-0 going against another really hot young fighter, CJ Vergara, who's 10-3-1. I think Taira is going to keep it up. I don't think he's a fluke. I think he's a legitimate UFC fighter. I think, anytime Dana brings somebody over who doesn't go through the contender series, doesn't go through any kind of like warm up, so to speak, and just jump straight into the pool swimming with sharks, I think is a good sign of what they think of this kid. He's done some damage over in Japan. Now it's time to do it stateside, and I think we're going to continue to see the rise of Taira. I think he's going to be a really good fighter for a while to come. Also on the card, of course, Askarov versus my boy Brandon Royval. I know y'all thought I was going to make that pick, but I'm actually scared for him in this fight. I'm not super confident, so I stayed away from that one. Jordan Wright versus Todorovic. Martinez versus Davis. Rafael Asano versus Victor Henry. Maximov, who's he bounced back after his first loss. We didn't know how he'd react. He came back and got a win. So let's see what he does now. He's fighting Jacob Malkoun. You got Brito versus Alexander. Brandon's ladies, Rodriguez versus Hughes. And then Mike Jackson somehow stays on the roster. I don't know what blackmail he has over Dana, but he's there against Pete Rodriguez. Brandon, any other fights really stand out to you?
And looking to see how Sam Hughes continues to progress in her martial arts career. So I'm always always looking out for the ladies as well. And
she's going against Rodriguez, who's undefeated. That's tough.
Yeah, and then also too on that main card, like you said, the flyweight fight. All right, I got my eyes on those two as well. Askrenov and Royval.
I always love watching Rafael Asano. He brings it every time. Victor Henry's a nice young fighter. And Asano just seems to never age. That dude he's been around forever. And I still think he's probably only in his late 30s. I don't even think he's that old. And then, of course, that Askarov versus Royval fight up top. That's going to be it's going to go a long way to see. And, obviously we know Alex Pantoja is up there waiting to see what happens with he's an alternate for the quadrilogy between Figueiredo and Moreno. But these two guys could be next after that. So both of them need to get a win. Both of them need to get going. So it's going to be interesting to see, especially Royval, because he had a couple bumps. So now he has really got to bounce back. And then Joe Anderson Brito, man, that dude, I love watching that dude fight. He's so much fun. So it's actually a sleeper card. A lot of people are talking about next week with the pay-per-view and UFC 280, but I haven't even seen UFC really promote this card that much. Mm-hmm. But this could be one of the best cards we've seen in the last few weeks. So definitely check it out. October 15th, UFC Vegas 62 or UFC Fight Night 212, whatever y'all want to call it. I don't care. I'm keeping the Vegas name. How about you, Brandon?
Yeah, I'll go with the Vegas. That's what it is now.
It just sounds better. Like when they go to Oklahoma City, right? It's like UFC Oklahoma City. It just so happens that,
that's me.
Bless you.
Thanks.
It just so happened they've been in the Apex now for, since the pandemic. I'm pretty sure that Mark Zuckerberg didn't rent this one out, so you might see some fans. I don't know. Mm-hmm. We'll see. Maybe he has, Larry Ellison or some other tech billionaire coming in to rent it out this week. I don't know who Dana's kissing ass to this week. I know he doesn't like me, so it's fine. Anyway, Brandon, any final thoughts before we get out of here today?
Just want to give a shout out to one of my teammates, Rob Vericchio, who actually fought last Saturday for CFFC.
Yeah.
Yep, he got the job done. He got a TKO in the third round. So kudos to him. He's staying undefeated 3-0. And just shout out to CFFC for always putting on.
He looks great. Fights. I thought he looked great in his last fight too. It's Vericchio. That's how you say it.
That's what I want to say. Yeah.
I always thought it was Vericchio. I'll take the teammate's word for it. That's why I butcher every name, and Brandon just says the first names, and we're good to go.
Yeah. And then also too, my other teammate, he actually just came to the team like 6 months ago, but he was in the co-main event. Dave, real tall guy. He had lost by rear naked choke, but I mean he was looking good, with his striking. But hey, you make one mistake, somebody can make you pay for it. But he'll be back. I was actually just talking to him earlier today. He's gonna go home, back to Virginia, and then boom, he's gonna come back next week. He's gonna get back to training again. Solomon's
fighting this week, right?
Yeah, Solomon is fighting. I want to say this. I think he's fighting this Friday, and so is another teammate of ours, Munch as well. I believe they're both on the same card.
Yeah, I noticed it because also this Friday is Luke's Fight League 27. So me and Alex were talking about that date, and I saw Solomon Renfro pop up. We're talking about his fight coming up. So one of the greatest shows on earth. Go ahead and watch the Solomon Renfro show. He'll tell you himself. But we love Solomon. Always wish that dude success. You'll never get a boring fight with Solomon Renfro. I promise you that. And I'm hoping he strings a few together and gets another shot at the UFC. But, that's time to be told. Of course, Shane's going to be fighting in November on that. Man, did they set up Marlon Moraes for failure or what? They did the big deal.
We'll sign him. I mean, he.
Man, you sit there and sign him to come back to come back home. and the first fight you put him in is like your big next big star at featherweight.
Hey man, he wants to move up to featherweight. He should have stayed. He should have stayed at bantamweight. You know,
man. Marlon, I wish you well, but I don't think that's the fight for you, especially since he's also been knocked out a few times. So a fighter like Shane is probably not a great matchup. But we'll see you in November. We'll talk about that then. Ladies and gentlemen, that is our episode today. Make sure you leave a comment, jump in the conversation, let us know what's going on, your thoughts, the good, the bad, the ugly, and I'm not just talking about me. I'm talking about Brandon too. He's not that pretty. Stop pumping him up. Anyway, we will talk to you soon. Let's hope that your boy gets his lead dog status back this week and Brandon doesn't continue to dominate me in that category. Big fights coming up this weekend, and obviously a lot more coming up next weekend as well. So check all that out. This is Art of MMA. I'm Mike Ginn. That's the Mechanic. Enjoy the fights this weekend, and we're out.